100 100 110. Maybe you're worried about fire safety where you live. Text 81012. David Wilton is the Chief Executive of TPAS Cymru, an organisation that supports tenants and landlords in Wales. Hello there, David.
Morning.
Thank you very much for coming in. You think people should be angry about this, don't you?
Absolutely. I think the scale of Grenfell disaster was avoidable. The report said that there was a level of incompetency, and really we should be angry about this. Should never have happened. People should never have died. And 7 years on, yes, progress has been made, but there's still a lot of issues. As your correspondent said, no criminal charges yet for another 2 years, and people should be angry about what happened there and where we are now.
What should they be angry about?
I think the level of incompetency and the complacency, tenants weren't listened to, and there's an argument, are they listened to now? There's still a lot of frustration that buildings in Wales still haven't been sorted out. There is progress, but at what speed?
And as I said there, as I was introducing you, one would like to have thought that 7 years on, when we have a fair idea, don't we, of what caused this fire and what caused it to spread so quickly and caused so many people to lose their lives, one would have thought that in 7 years we might be in a position where something like this could never happen again.
There was two issues I think came out of it. One, that we needed to look at all the buildings in Wales. So firstly, which ones aren't cladding, but also when building inspectors started looking in more detail, they found more and more problems with fire safety. So there was about 400 buildings that were classed as problems, and they've been working through it. But the second issue was who to pay for it. So the ministers and Welsh Government right from the beginning said it shouldn't be the people who live in, that, the flat owners, but getting the builders to pay has been slow. They have not stood up to their obligations, and so it's been trying to force the builders. Finding building owners was another issue. Who owned or who built them originally was a problem.
Well, who built them? This is the problem, isn't it? That you've got the leaseholders. Sometimes you've got four steps here. You have the leaseholders who've bought these flats. Sometimes they're living in there. Sometimes they have tenants in there as well.
That's where there's a fifth level.
Which
Yes,
is another level.
Absolutely.
But then you've got somebody owns the building, and that might even be an offshore trust or an investment fund. Somebody has bought the building, the freehold. They charge the ground rent, and then you've got the people who built the thing in the first place as well. There are too many opportunities, aren't there, for people to point the finger and say it's not us.
And freehold things like that are traded and exchanged and owned by pension funds, investment trusts, offshore companies. It took a long time to get to the bottom of that, and the tenants are the ones who live in those buildings who have been faced with really large bills in service charges, things like that, and the fear of living in buildings that some of them had some real problems with them.
So the fifth layer of all of that is the government. Why don't the government just pay?
I think they didn't want to straight away. They couldn't write a blank cheque for this. They wanted to force the builders to come and pay. And I've argued with the Minister and others in Welsh Government many times that how we allow in certain house builders to continue building in Wales when they haven't made good their responsibilities for these existing buildings.
But they say it's not their responsibility, don't they?
Yeah, but they built some of these, built the vast majority of them, and they shouldn't be allowed to continue.
But they would say that they were signed off by building control.
They were, yes, and there is a catalogue of failures, as your correspondent Kate said, in terms of building control, fire safety. But they built these buildings, and the consequences were there in Grenfell, and you've got to ask them, do they want to see the same thing happen in some of their buildings? They may have walked away from them and say it's not their problem now, but they need to step up and do it now.
How far off are we?
I think there is a lot of progress, but there's still a number of them that are part in progress. I think there's still about 100 still to be started. They're not all cladding. Some of them are different levels of work, but we're still a number of years away, and that's really frustrating for the people living and fearful for the people living there.
Well, I was going to say, so there are people, I don't know if you've got a sense of how many people there are, going to bed in Wales every night thinking, is tonight going to be the night?
Well, that's right. If you do the numbers, in terms of there's 100 plus buildings still not started, different levels of issues there. There's some that are in flight, in work happening, but that's a lot of people around those urban places in Cardiff, Swansea, Newport, where most of these flats are, less so in rural areas of Wales. But it's also other types of buildings as well, mixed ones with shops below, with flats above. There's a number of them that we built in Wales over the years.
David, thank you for coming in.
No problem.
Thank you. David Wilton, Chief Executive of TPAS Cymru. Are you one of those? Are you one of those concerns over